Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of Head in the Clouds with Citrus Global. Today I'm excited to be accompanied by Mr. Roee Hartuv. Hope I've got your name pronunciation correct there. Roee is a partner at Costa Norte, which is a boutique investment bank that specialises in supporting German technology businesses with on their quest to funding. So look, he's got some really good advice, obviously specifically for founders, would-be startups, or alternatively companies that are perhaps at second round funding. So without any further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Roee. If you could just give us a bit of insight into yourself and a bit about what you guys are doing over at Costa Norte.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me over. At Costa Norte, we, as you said, we help technological companies raise funding mostly from Germany, but all across Europe and some from Israel as well, securing Series A and above. And the way that we do it, we sit down with the company, define an investment strategy. We actually break down their entire business plan and rebuild it to make it seem attractive to investors. So that's like the preparation stage that we do. That usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. Then we go out, start reaching to investors. We have a very good network of more than 2,000 investments across Europe. And we make those connections to the companies. We support the founders, the executives in all the pitch, due diligence, and then negotiation process until we have a signed deal. The company was founded 4 years ago by Iran Aloni, and we're very active, as I said before, in Germany and growing. And the typical clients that we support, as you mentioned, anything that involves technology, deep tech companies. And we work with those founders. So founders are the CEOs, CTOs come to us 3 reasons. First of all, they know they probably are, in some cases, they're experienced entrepreneurs, and they know that fundraising takes anywhere between 3 to 6 months. And that could take up to 60, 80% of their time. And usually they're in the critical stage of the company that they need to focus on growth, and they cannot spend that amount of time chasing the money. Okay. So they've done it in the past, they know what it takes, and they come to us and say, hey guys, take it from me, just bring me in front of relevant investors. Second kind of clients is people that don't necessarily have the experience of fundraising, and they need that external support, how to build the materials, how to build the right business plan to be attractive, so it will be attractive to potential investors. That's another reason. And the third reason is that we really have a good network to investors. It's most likely that we'll be able to introduce our clients to the relevant investors much faster than what they could have done on their own.
Okay, so plugging them into your wider network.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I suppose in summary, you take away or you help alleviate some of the stresses and strains of securing funding, allowing the founders, the CTOs, to focus on the core, the core business, and ultimately do their day job.
And of course, every leader and every executive in those startups, they always think about how much money they have left in the bank and how much runway they have, right? And that causes a lot of stress, especially when you get closer to that, right? So imagine that you have somebody that helps you guide you through the process and increases the chances of closing. So that's the problem, the pain that we help solve.
Understood. No, very interesting. And so why Germany?
Actually, I'm originally from Israel. I moved to Berlin 5 years ago. Israel is a great ecosystem for entrepreneurs, great technologies, and great startups coming up. Yeah, and I thought 5 years ago when we made the decision to move to Germany, we chose Berlin because Berlin is a huge potential.
Mm,
Germany itself, the ecosystem has a lot of great, amazing startups coming up, and
yeah.
if Tel Aviv is a startup world, startup city, um, Berlin is almost second place, right?
Yeah.
Maybe just second to London in Europe and UK. So yeah, it's a very exciting time and a very exciting ecosystem here in Germany and Berlin specifically.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, look, post Brexit, maybe not second to London, but look, I know obviously Berlin is the epicenter of startups for Germany. But as I've said previously, the German government and German industry and Germans in general just seem to get tech companies and just seem to almost, yeah, really understand and support startups and scale up businesses with, be that federal support. Obviously, they've got a really good infrastructure. It's great for talent, although in Berlin, it's obviously very, very tough because everyone's looking for the same kind of people.
Yeah.
But no. And what are you as someone that sits on maybe the other side of the fence, so more the investment side? What are you guys seeing from a tech perspective in Germany?
Yeah. So traditionally what we saw, any technologies and companies that are focused on e-commerce, fintech, insurance tech,
Hmm.
automotive and mobility, and even energy and renewable companies. Of course, that's prominent in Germany. Um, I think ever since COVID hit, all the automotive and mobility startups are struggling to find their way because the corporates, the companies, the automotive companies in Germany are not doing
Hmm.
so well. So there's a bit of slowdown. But e-commerce, fintech, all those industries, they're continuing to grow during the pandemic. So yeah, that's quite interesting to see. But any company that some has some sort of remote solution
Hmm.
is thriving. That's what, first of all, investors are looking for. That's what all the corporates, from a business development, from a sales point of view, all the corporates, the companies are now looking to switch from having a person in the manufacturing line operate the machine to remote maintenance. And for example, we're working with a very nice IoT company in Germany that can connect remotely to machines in the manufacturing floor. IoT
Okay.
Industry 4.0 company.
Yep.
Their sales have an interest and requests for demos from clients have really increased during COVID because it allows the manufacturing plants to continue to work using half the force and people actually working and monitoring the machines, the manufacturing line, from not necessarily being on site. So that's the kind of solution. So any company, any startup that has some sort of solution that allows either corporates or individuals to perform their job or anything remotely,
Remotely.
not being present, that's really increasing right now.
Interesting. So look, you touched on IoT. I mean, IoT is very much a hot topic globally, specifically on the startup scene. But necessarily aside from IoT, what are you guys seeing as maybe another hot topic or perhaps the next big trend in the tech space from an investment perspective? What are people looking for?
I think it's pretty obvious, right? And what I'm going to say is not going to surprise anybody. Anybody that has a solution now in e-commerce, right? We saw the giants, the U.S. Giants, increasing
Yeah.
revenue and market share. It goes, the same direction. So any startup that is supporting those kind of companies, yeah, that's very interesting for investors. Fintech, insurtech, again, very hot in Germany and still very attractive to to investors. Yeah, those are all the sectors and technologies that are still very attractive to investors.
Yeah, yeah, we work with a couple of insure tech businesses actually, and yeah, I almost feel like insurance as a sector is probably one of the last to have a real revolution. If you look at obviously fintech in banking, insurance has been around for just as long, and some of their processes are still so archaic, you know, and they've been doing it the same way for 100+ years. So there's real opportunity for companies to come in, often startups or you know, or companies that maybe branch off from larger corporates, and yeah, and obviously disrupt that space. And as a sector, it's something that's, you know, certainly not, you know, it's very robust. It's certainly not going anywhere. So it's yeah, we really do, we are seeing that in terms of yeah, in terms of across our client base. Interestingly, so you know, as I sort of said at the beginning of this, and obviously me and you have spoken a few times now, our typical clients that we would be supporting are, as I say, startups, funded startups, scale up, so companies that are in sort of hyper growth mode because, you know, they've just secured funding or another round of funding. But you know, as someone that sits on the investment side of the fence, just give me an idea as to, you know, any kind of tips that you could perhaps offer, or maybe let's say what's the biggest mistake that you see entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs and founders make when looking to, I suppose, go to market and secure funding, venture capital?
Yeah, so good question. Let's focus on a German ecosystem. German startups, German founders are usually very conservative. Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to money and raising capital, which means that they're underestimating the amount of money that they need. They're underestimating the potential growth rate. So very conservative on how fast they grow.
Right.
Which, of course, from an investment point of view, they want to see you grow as fast as possible, right? And that's usually what they're looking to see. Mm-hmm. And eventually, they're not asking for the right amount of money that they actually need. So they're asking for less, which means that if they are getting what they're asking, they will run out of money.
Right. So it's not enough.
Less than 18 months, which is not ideal.
Okay.
Yeah, so investors are looking for that hyper growth, and they know that you cannot predict, but you need to have some grit here to be able to say, hey, this is where I'm going. This is the growth rate that I'm looking to achieve, and in order to get there, I need that amount of money. So if you're now focusing and indeed your numbers, ask for twice as much. Okay. That's in a lot of cases we go in and say, hey, you want how much X? No, you need to ask for 2X.
Right.
And also investors appreciate that because they don't want you to go back to them before a year and a half, sooner than a year and a half or 2 years after the round, right? Investors are looking for something unique. They're looking for the home runs. Mm-hmm. If you have a Me Too kind of solution, if you don't necessarily put what you're unique and the value that you can bring that others don't have, it's not attractive to investors. And you need to find that unique point of view. And you know, you're from the technology space. It doesn't necessarily need to. You don't necessarily have to have a unique technology. It's good. That's where probably most of the value comes from. But being unique is maybe a business model, go-to-market strategy, you know, a specific sector that right. is untapped. You need to be unique. So those founders need to ask themselves, do we have something unique that can attract the traditional VC investors? Okay,
so it doesn't. So in summary, it's more so the application of the technology as opposed to the technology itself. So if the technology already exists, but it's not being applied in a particular sector, or it's not being applied to solve a particular problem, there's uniqueness in that, and that is what's attractive to, you know, to would-be investors.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
That's a general mistake, like the founders say that our technology is great and we can do all sorts of things. But when you go broader, you're probably less unique. So focus. Again, it could be technology, it could be a market segment, it could be even if your leadership team is unique and that they have experience. That's also something that differentiates between you and the competition. Yeah, but if for the sake of not repeating myself, I have another tip. You know the phrase always be selling, always be networking. Right. That's but I would like to take that phrase and say always be fundraising. In a sense that you're not always really fundraising, but you're always networking and talking to investors.
Right.
At any given moment, you should have certain contacts, certain investors that are already in your contact list that you talked to in the past, that you met, that you can, if you decide to fundraise now, you can just tell them, hey, this is the time. Remember, we talked back then. This is how much I'm raising. Are you interested?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Wish you and the guys at Costa Norte a really good strong end to 2020.